Hello everybody, Hawk here. Check out what I've got, the Behringer Model D. This is an amazing little device. It's a recreation of the Moog Model D, the classic Moog Model D synthesizer. But it's a tenth of the price. Heck, it's even less than a tenth of the price when you consider the fact that the original Model D on the used market goes for about $4,500. The Moog reissue cost about $3,500. And the street price for this, $300. You heard me right, $300 for a faithful recreation of Moog's classic Model D synth. That is impressive, and it's hard to complain about anything on this for that price. It's a solid build. It's got a nice metal chassis. It's got nice wood ends. Check out that nice wood panel there. It's got MIDI in and through, as well as a USB port on it. And this USB port, by the way, is just for MIDI data. It's not for audio, so just MIDI connectivity. One cool thing with the MIDI ports, apparently, if you have more than one of these, you can chain them together so that you can create a polyphonic synth from multiple monophonic synths. That's pretty cool. So it's hard to find anything to complain about with this for $300. But I do have one critique. My critique is that it doesn't respond to MIDI CC. I don't understand why it doesn't respond to MIDI CC, because in the manual it says that it responds to MIDI sysx. But since it doesn't respond to MIDI CC, that means that I can't take, for example, the filter cutoff and automate that from my DAW program, which is a bummer, because being able to automate parameters from your DAW program is one of those key production tricks to making your synths sing and have dynamic morphing sounds. Of course, I can record it manually. I mean, the knobs feel great, but still, what's going on there? I'm not sure. One hypothesis I have is that better MIDI implementation is coming. Meaning that if it has sysx capabilities and it has MIDI built into it, perhaps Behringer will be able to update the MIDI implementation and get us MIDI CC, and maybe even better still, they'll have a software sysx librarian so that we can save and store patches on our computer. So remember, this analog synth, it doesn't have any presets. Personally, I'm a presets guy. I like presets. I like to be able to go ahead and program a sound and be able to quickly recall it. So if we have a MIDI sysx librarian available on our computer, that would be the bomb for this, and it would take it to a whole nother level. So I really hope that that's what Behringer is planning on doing in the future. Now, my objective of this video is not to do a review of the product, because heck, there are all sorts of other great YouTube reviews of the Behringer Model D. In fact, there is a review that compares the Model D with a vintage Model D, this Model D with a vintage Moog Model D, and it's darn hard to tell the difference between the two synths, the waveforms on the two synths. So my objective for this video is to program some patches and to hear how it sounds in the mix. So let's get to that. One thing that's great about the Model D is its 3 oscillators and the ability to tune each oscillator to a different pitch. This means that even though this is a monophonic synth, we can actually get chords out of it. Oh, also, before I start tuning these oscillators, I should mention that since it's analog, I'm always making sure that each of the oscillators are in tune. So if I play a C note here, I'll make sure that it's in tune with the master tune control here. Then I'll tune each oscillator as I build my sound. Checking oscillator 1, it sounds a little flat. There, that sounds great. Next, I'll tune oscillator 2 to the third of a major scale, a C major scale.
I'll turn off oscillator 1 and make sure that the oscillator 2 is enabled. So an E note. There, that sounds great. I can change the waveforms here and control the oscillator's octave. I want a good sounding waveform for playing chords. Next, I'll tune oscillator 3. There's the 5th of the scale, the G note. There's actually some noise from the noise generator on. I'll turn this off for now. Nice, that sounds perfect. That sounds good. Beautifully in tune. And that's the tuning for oscillator 3, the G note. So now let's listen to all the oscillators together. The major chord, I'll start with the root on oscillator 1. That sounds good, but let's adjust the volumes for each oscillator here. And I'll add a little bit of overdrive with the overload control. Maybe a little bit of white noise from the noise generator. Now let's add a bit of modulation and set our LFO rate. I just want a touch of depth for the LFO modulation. There we go. And now I can actually play . See, I'm playing chords. I'm actually playing major chords using single notes. F major, C major, G major, E flat major. If I want to play a minor chord, I can do this too. I just need to tune the 3rd down a half step. I'll go back here and make sure that my modulation is turned off so that I get a nice pure tone that I can actually tune. And here's oscillator 2, which is my 3rd of the major chord, and I'll flat it to make a minor 3rd. That was actually the volume. I'll flat it over here with the oscillator's tuning knob. So there it is, E flat, or in the case of my tuner, D sharp. Now I'll turn on all the oscillators so that we can hear them together. Starting with my root, the C note, my flat 3rd, and then the 5th. That's a minor chord. It doesn't sound nearly as sweet as the major chord. So that's the idea. Now I can go ahead and sequence some minor chords and then sequence some major chords and build a chord progression from a single monophonic synth patch, all because this analog synth has 3 oscillators. As you might expect, the Behringer Model D also makes some amazing bass sounds, and I don't need all of the oscillators on for bass sounds. So I'll start by turning all of the oscillators off except oscillator 1. Also, I don't actually need the noise generator or the overdrive on this sound. I'll leave the LFO modulation enabled that I had set previously. I definitely want a nice tight attack on this patch, so I'll be adjusting the decay and sustain for the amp envelope and the filter. I can change the oscillator, but first let's lower the octave here. That's nice. On the other hand, this is getting a little bit too low. I can even try different waveforms. Let's lower the filter decay. I want the filter to sound nice, tight, and punchy. And while I'm playing it, I can even tweak the filter cutoff. There, that sounds pretty nice. Let's work with that. Now, obviously, the trick for working with an analog synth like this that doesn't have presets, basically, is dial up the sound, record it, and then move on to the next sound. Behringer's Model D is also equally at home with lead sounds. We'll start with this bass sound, and basically shift it up by an octave or two for a lead sound. I'll turn up the octave here, and we definitely want it to sustain longer, so I'll turn up the decay and sustain here in the amp envelope section. I'll also open up the filter a little bit more. I'll turn the LFO modulation back on. I think I want to dirty it up, so I'll add oscillator 2 in order to use its overload control. So I'll definitely need to tune this oscillator because I left it tuned to a minor third. So there's actually a built-in A440 tuner on the Model D, so I can simply use it. I'll turn off oscillator 1 and make sure that the oscillator 2 is enabled. And of course, I need to turn off the modulation so that I have a nice steady note. And instead of looking at the tuner, I'll just use my ears. There, that sounds in tune. Now I can add this oscillator back in with oscillator 1. Let's flip on the modulation again, and then add it back with the first oscillator. I could try a different waveform. Adjust the volumes on these two different oscillators. Add a little dirt by turning up the overload overdrive control. Sometimes you need to turn down the volume on the master so you're not clipping your output when you turn up the overdrive. Turn up the mod depth a little bit and increase the modulation depth. Also, turn up the octave on this second oscillator and maybe hear what adding the third oscillator sounds like. Alright, this one is tuned to a fifth, remember that? So I'll need to turn off the first two oscillators, then turn on the A440 tuner, kind of difficult to tune this oscillator at such a low pitch. So I'll turn up its octave for a higher pitch. There we go. Add a little white noise in. Then turn up the rest of the oscillators. So for this lead sound, I don't really like this effect. I don't want to have another oscillator in the mix relative to the other two oscillators. But you get the idea. You've got a lot of options here with all of these oscillators. Anyhow, this sounds pretty sweet with two oscillators. So let's record this and move on.
So there you have it. Let's take a listen to what all three of those sounds, the chords, the bass, and the lead synth, sound like in a little composition. I went ahead and recorded it, tracked each one of those sounds out before I moved on to the next patch, and then I added a little bit of a beat inside of Reason for good measure and gave it a quick mix. Let's take a listen. Let me know what you guys think.